Hey, I'm Nick Von Brack, and this is the Record Podcast. Today we are doing something different. Instead of doing the mini-episode mix-up schedule, I'm just going to throw a full episode on here. My guest is Jon Alvin, the producer hailing from Chicago. He has produced Dr.Manhattan, Mutts, Carbon Tigers, Bailiff, and he's also a former member of the band This Is Cinema, which is one of my favorite local bands that we used to play with. No real reason why I'm doing this. I've just backlogged a few episodes, and instead of getting comfortable and getting myself set for the next few months, I figured why not just start posting these things when I can. And I'll mix in some mini episodes just to break it up now and then. Jon and I talk about a bunch of stuff. We talk about babies, as he's expecting a baby soon. Talk about his history of music, owning your own studio, the difference between being an engineer and a producer, recording Dr. Manhattan, some good stories there, do's and don'ts of recording as a band and a producer, and a bunch of more stuff. In upcoming interviews, I'm going to be posting the Tyler Wildey interview, which is the owner of Epic Deli in Johnsburg, and he's also a local musician. Scott Heisel of Substream Magazine and formerly of Alternative Press. And coming up, schedule pending, I've got Arun of Saves the Day, Goose of Norma Jean, Steve of The Color Morale, Mike Abuso, Matt Angers of Esophagus, Kurt Travis of A Lot Like Birds. A lot of interviews lined up, so I'm going to try to make this happen with all our mixed up schedules. Twitter contest. All right, so this week I didn't have anything to give away from the guests, but I figured I'd just give away something from my own personal stash. So the winner of that is Jeremy Huron, who's at JTrain039 on Twitter. I'm going to be sending you a random record from my collection. So I'll get in touch with you to get your address. So I'll give you a nice little treat to add to your own vinyl collection at home. All right, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Please share our links, Facebook.com/The Record Podcast, Twitter @The Record Podcast without the A. And for my personal links, I'm on Instagram and Twitter @Zombie, 2 Z's and 4 E's. And Facebook, you can just search Nick Von Brack, and it should just pop up there. Doing a podcast is difficult, more difficult than I anticipated, especially having a newborn baby and a wife that works all the time, and we're crazy busy at home. So doing anything you can on your guys' end, sharing this stuff, spreading the love on the podcast is really helpful. So I get more people to listen to this, and I get all kinds of new guests for you guys and some cool stuff to give away too. So I appreciate all your guys' help with all this, and I hope you enjoy this interview with my buddy Jon Alvin.
Good. I haven't done this.
What, a podcast?
I've done a couple of those, but I haven't done video chat in a long time.
Oh, yeah, me neither. That's what I mean when I pulled... I had a little sticker over the cam, so I didn't even set it up to do it.
Oh, yeah. Is that because you don't want the government watching you?
That's because my wife doesn't want the government watching her.
Oh, that makes sense. I love it.
So how you been, man?
Good. It's the end of the year, so it's pretty relaxed and just not a lot going on. But that's not necessarily true. It's been a lot going on, but I've been at home a lot recently, so that's been awesome. I've been able to relax, and we're making a lot of food today, cookies and.
Oh, nice. Are you guys doing New Year's at your house or something, or going to a friend's?
Yeah, we're doing New Year's here.
Awesome.
And then we're gonna go to another friend's later. But yeah, we're getting ready to have a baby, and
yeah,
that's amazing.
Do you know gender yet? Has that been figured out? A secret?
We're not gonna find it out.
Cool.
We're just gonna, roll with it. You guys found out though, right?
Yeah, we did. We actually, I guess we didn't have to, but once earlier on in the pregnancy, we had to take a bunch of tests. I don't even know if I told you this story. Did I tell you the problems we were having?
No.
So we found out that both of us carry the gene for cystic fibrosis.
Okay.
And once they find out for the mom, then they have to test the dad. And then and they're like, oh, well, the odds of both you having it's super rare, and both of us have it. And so then at that point, it's a 1 in 4 chance the baby has it. So once they had done the blood testing and stuff for it, like they knew the gender. I mean, they could have kept it a secret still, but they're like, well, they knew pretty early on, like 12 weeks or something, like super early. And then at that point, we're just like, all right, well, it'd be nice to plan ahead. And Jen's a big planner. She wants to have the room colored and all that. So we found out pretty early on.
What's cystic fibrosis?
So that was my same question when they told us that. So basically, my understanding of it is, it's like your body is, the fluids in your body are thicker than they're supposed to be, like in your lungs and stuff. So your chest, like, I guess at once a month or something, you have to wear a plate over your chest to like kind of shake it up and break up the phlegm, or else it gets like too thick. And typically, someone with cystic fibrosis doesn't, they live, like nowadays they can live to like their 30s, but most times it's like a total guessing game. So odds are it's like, it's not if, it's just when they're going to pass. So
wow,
that was a pretty stressful few weeks.
Yeah, totally. We just found out that we don't have Sarah doesn't have gestational diabetes.
That's scary too. Yeah, it's scary too.
That was like, she had to go through like the second round of tests for that. And we were just like, oh.
Yeah.
And then like early on for us, we found out that they're doing like, or that the baby has like an enlarged kidney or something.
Okay.
And so that was like a scare, but I think we're going to be okay with that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny when you're pregnant, like the whole thing is just like, oh, we got like, because up until then we had been hearing all these friends of Jen's and people she worked with, like they're all having trouble getting pregnant. So we're like, oh, this is going to take us a while, like more than we expect or something. So so we plan to we're like, oh, well, we'll start trying, and then in like a year it'll happen, and it just happened right away. So we're like, okay. So then we just assumed, all right, that's all the trouble there is. After that, it's smooth sailing. But then we found out about the cystic fibrosis stuff, and we're just like, oh yeah, there's all this scary shit now. And
right.
It's crazy how much I didn't think about any of those kind of risks or things like that happening. And then, you get into it. There's Jen, when she got into the hospital, they found out she had preeclampsia. So then that was...
Okay.
That was...
Was your baby early then?
No, she was 2 days late. So
okay.
They don't know if she had it for a while, if it was, if it happened during the delivery part of the whole thing. So there's just all these things I'm learning about now that I had no idea what they were.
Totally. Yeah.
When do you guys do?
March 21st.
Awesome.
So
very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever sign up for the what to expect when you're expecting like emails?
We did a couple classes. No, did we do just one? We signed up for 2 and only went to 1. I went to the breastfeeding one, and then there was another one of like the basics of childcare, and we actually ran into a girl that I went to high school with at the class I went to, and she's like, oh, don't waste your time. She's like, it's super basic, like nothing you don't already know. So we're just like, all right, we didn't do that one. But we got some books. I read a couple books, like all the dad style books. What about you?
I signed up for the what to expect when you're expecting like email chain, and I just remember like it was like 2 months into the pregnancy where they were already sending off. There was one email that I'll never forget, that like the subject line was just "time is running out," like exclamation mark. And it was just like, what? Like,
what's happening?
What? So my favorite book right now is this book called The Good Enough Parent, and it's by this like European guy, and I don't really know what to say about it, but it's like definitely asked a lot of really great questions, and it's like it talks about like what to do with like guns and violent stuff, and
like how to talk to your kid about that kind of stuff.
Well, just like that like children have aggressive, like they don't know what to do with their aggression, and they don't know what to do with all that, and so like what are the healthy ways to let that happen. And like when if you have a boy, like they will definitely like want to be playing guns, and then like how to respond to that, like not to necessarily be like no, like you can't do that, but
Right.
like to like how to like respond if they like shoot you, and like you know one of the things it says is like you know don't like if the kid is like shooting at you, like don't like pull out a machine gun and then be like essentially like you don't want to do stuff like that,
Yeah.
but you want to be like you're gonna be like oh like now that I'm dead what will you do, like I don't know.
I mean, at least it's a way to think about. Like, I would have, yeah, I would just been like, yeah, pull out a rocket launcher. Yeah, I probably don't even think about like those things actually mean things, and sets up precedences for that kid.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of stuff. I'm having a lot of the other stuff escapes me right now,
Yeah,
but yeah, I've been reading books about it. Yeah,
good.
sure.
I mean,
Mr. Rogers is a good one too.
oh, I would have
Yeah,
definitely read that.
it's super simple. It's like it's like all the chapters are really simple, and then like at the end of each chapter, there's just like this is what this chapter said in like 4 bullet points.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's, I
yeah.
mean, that shows that you're an excited dad, that you're
Oh
wanting to
hell
learn, that
yeah,
you're not just like, eh,
yeah.
I'll take them or leave them
I'm,
whenever they come.
I'm super pumped.
Good.
What you have a daughter, right? What's her name?
Yeah, Charlotte.
Charlotte. Charlotte. Yeah, it's a great name. Oh.
She's currently, oh, thank you, by the way. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I have her on a monitor. She's downstairs swinging, and I was going to move her upstairs, but I knew that I would risk that. Oh, I would risk then waking her up and then potentially put this off longer. So once she's asleep, you just kind of got to roll with the punches.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, so I usually try to take it back pretty far in with the whole beginning of the interview, and I'll ask something like, what was growing up like? Either you can start there, or like musically, like, what were the first bands you were in? But whatever you're comfortable getting into. I mean, yeah, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Glen Ellen, Illinois,
Okay.
and that's a western suburb of Chicago. It's like an hour west of Chicago. It's a little it's like it's a nice suburb, but it's like a little like uncultured in a way.
Okay.
So it's definitely just like mostly white people.
Yeah.
And I think that like my first few interactions with music and bands were I played in all of like the high school bands and all the junior high bands, and I started playing trumpet in 5th grade, and
Okay.
and then like the first shows that I would go and see were like basement hardcore shows, so they were just like really rowdy, like always a mosh pit, just like the crowd was a mosh pit.
Do you remember any of the first bands you saw, even if they were just like local?
Oh
bands?
yeah, Kung Fu Rick. There was a band called 19 of Salem.
Okay.
There was a band called Last in Line, Landmine. That was where that band Spitalfield came out of. Was all of that. So Spitalfield was like a basement band.
Okay.
There were another band called I think Step Forward, Look West. But yeah, there were Tom Sawyer. There were so many, and they were all like I just remember John Brown Battery. I think was from like Lincolnshire. They were all just like the most ridiculous shows. Like I remember there was like one show where like it would be like so hot in these basements.
Right.
It's like so hot, and this one like guitar player just like throws up in the middle of a guitar solo. but they keep playing, of course.
That's awesome.
And then like the 20 people that are in the basement are just like, yes, like you did that for us, like
Yeah, but that's the shit you don't. I mean, right there, you didn't forget it. That's something you will never forget.
No, I'll never forget that. Stick to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my beginning with like going to shows.
Yeah.
The first like legitimate concert I saw was Matchbox 20.
Okay.
But I was never really into them. I just went like with some. I didn't really start playing like guitar in bands until I was in college, like a sophomore in college, and I just played with like some other friends from around the city or whatever the school I was at, DePaul.
So no high school bands, no.
I tried, but
Yeah.
it was like, man, that was like, it's so funny to like think back to that. I remember like I had a hollow body electric guitar, and I would just like play like Enter Sandman with my friends, and then we would play like I would like learn like the Batman theme song.
Sure.
Like I was in jazz band, but I was like terrible at it. And like there was like another guy who was also like, we had like two guitar players because like jazz band was like all inclusive. It was just like, yeah, you want to play in jazz band? Just come join the jazz band.
Oh, okay.
So I was in jazz band, but I didn't really like understand what it meant to like play with feel or anything
right
back then. So, but yeah, so that's like my beginnings of all of this.
And you said you went to DePaul, and then that's when you started playing in a band for the first time.
I made a mistake. I actually the first band I played in was when I was a junior in high school. I played in a band called Lotus with this guy Wes, and he had a recording studio in his basement, and that was like how I got into recording. Was I would go over to his home, and his dad had like made the recording studio for Styx or whatever, and
Sweet.
so it was like a really great place, and I just loved that. So I played guitar in a band, and we played like 2 shows, and then like that was it.
Okay.
So
at what point does This Is Cinema start? Because I think that's when I meet you. Is either, well, I'll have to ask you. Do we meet because of This Is Cinema, or because of recording? Because of you recording us?
We met because of Daniel. I think.
Okay.
I think we met because of Daniel, and like I think it was because of Wax on Radio we met or something.
Okay.
Like I think like you guys were like into Wax on or something. And, or you guys had played shows, or you were like getting into bigger shows and stuff, and so that was happening. This Is Cinema happened. I dropped out of college. I opened up the studio, Big Gold Studios, and like went into just recording all the time. And yeah, I was working on the This Is Cinema album, and then I joined This Is Cinema after we finished the album.
Oh, okay.
Because no one would put up with the insanity of Ben and Marcin, and then it was and me really. So it was just us, and then we just went through all these drummers, including you. But yeah, that's how that happened. So I joined because there was no one else to join really.
Word machine, make me a language well speaking, one that flows into the ears and out of the mouth. For I am a tree that'll never be free. My roots
at what point did recording become interesting to you? Because a lot of stories, a lot of people I'll talk to is like, oh, I heard this band, I listened to No Effects, then I picked up a guitar, and then I played in punk bands, and then that. But like, how does a producer, or at least your experience, like what happened for you to then get interested in recording?
I got interested in recording because of going over to that first band that I was in, Lotus, them having a recording studio in the basement. And then on top of that, my other friend's dad was, he was a jingle writer, and he had a recording studio in Chicago. And so he like, I would go there, I interned there when I was in high school, and being in the recording studio was really neat. But what really solidified it for me was when I went to DePaul, I was going to go for music business. Mm-hmm. And I took a class in music business, and it was just so boring. And it was just like, I was not into it. And my friends were like, who were in This Is Me Smiling and Now Any Kind, they were like recording an album at Atlas with Matt Allison, who did the Alkaline Trio albums and the Lawrence Arms. And they were like, hey, can you drive us to the studio? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I drove them to the studio, and I got to like spend time in the studio. I was just like, this is awesome. Yeah. I really love this. And so it was kind of like that. And then like not a year later, they were like, well, we're going to record our album with Sean O'Keefe, and he owns a studio, but he's selling that studio. Do you want to go in on the studio together? And I was like, yeah, like not knowing what any of this meant. Like,
right.
I had no idea about any of this stuff. And so there was a day where they were like, all right, like, well, like we're going to take out a small business loan. And I was like, all right. And so they showed up at my parents' house with this contract that was like, here's the loan amount, like you need a cosigner. And I didn't even tell my parents.
Wow.
And they showed up, and I was just, I'm going to open a recording, sign this. And they're just like, what? And they signed it. And then I opened this recording studio with Matt and Dan. Matt and Dan then like left after 3 months. They were like, we don't want to do this. And so So it was just me then, like in charge of this recording studio, and I went through all these business partners, but it really just wound up being me who made it work. So it was really like falling backwards into it in a lot of ways, and I would have to say that like I was into listening to music a lot too. I was really into listening to records and listening to albums by people I like Radiohead and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you remember like the first record that kind of got you interested in like, oh, you know, better than just songwriting, like there's a lot going on outside of that?
This was really confusing for me because I was always around songwriters, and I was always around people who were in bands and stuff, but the music that I was really drawn to when I was in high school was like Aphex Twin and a lot of electronic music, Autechre and Boards of Canada, and then a little bit of Radiohead and Bjork, but Bjork's records were like largely electronica albums,
right?
And so I had no way of knowing how to do any of that stuff, like do electronic stuff. Nor was anyone really interested in doing that stuff. So I was recording a lot of bands, but that wasn't really like that. That wasn't. I guess I like maybe it was like maybe I saw like a light at the end of the tunnel, and I was like, maybe I'll get there someday. I'll be able to do this to people. But yeah, so the earliest stuff that made me really interested in recording was the Come to Daddy EP by Aphex Twin, and there was just the way that the ride cymbal sounded on that record. It was just like on this one song, IZUS. It was like, that's amazing. And I would sit in my basement, and I would mic up ride cymbals, and I would like try different samples, and none of them sounded like even close. And I was just like, ah. Another great sounding album was Clarity by Jimmy Eat World, and it was like the snare sound.
Yeah.
Like So then I would like, mic up the snare and like put the mic in all the different places until it sounded like Jimmy Eat World's snare.
That's cool. That's a cool way to go about it, though. I mean, that's a way to learn by just taking time and moving things around and seeing how things react, how mics sound in different places in a room.
It never made any sense though, because like with Jimmy Eat World's snare, like putting a mic and then like the snare and like hitting the snare, like that's one thing, but then like putting all the drums around it and being like, okay, well, like I can't mic a snare from 4 feet away and have it sound like so I had to learn about all that stuff.
Yeah.
My first recording session was a mess. It was I remember the band showed up and I had no idea how to use any of this recording stuff at this studio that I just bought into. And so I had to send them home because I didn't even know how to work the patch bay. It was just sorry guys. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare.
Were the band? Did you still end up recording the band, or were they like, this is sketchy?
I think so. Yeah, no, I did. Yeah, it was a hardcore band called The Conductor.
Okay.
Yeah, I recorded them. It sounded probably really bad. I don't know.
You blocked it out of your memory.
I haven't heard. I haven't heard it like since I finished it.
Okay.
Something like that.
So, for This Is Cinema, when you recorded them, was that pretty? Had you already done a few albums, or was that pretty early on in recording for you too?
Well, that was still pretty early on, but I had done I'd probably worked with like 10 or 15 different people at that point.
Okay.
And yeah, and they like came to me. Yeah, they came to me, and I had recorded 2 songs for them. Then I recorded that EP with them, and after I did the first 2 songs with them, they were like, "Cool, like let's do more." So,
and for an album so when did you do that? Was that like
that was
9 years ago or something?
That was 2005.
Oh, okay, so like over 10 years ago almost. Do you listen back in that, and like when I talk to musicians, I'll ask like, can you listen back and enjoy songs? But for producers, can you listen back and enjoy it, or is it like too much? Like you're just picking up too many things that you wish you could have changed?
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
I actually listened to that album like sometimes I put that album on like the most recent. It's been like a couple times at like the end of a session or something. It'll like come on or something, and I'll just be like, damn.
You should react that way because that EP holds up, man. It sounds
awesome.
So good.
I remember seeing Ben at the Art Institute where we both studied, and I was just like, Ben, like, this was like also like 7 years after the fact. I was like, Ben, that album's really good, and he's just like not interested.
Yeah,
But I remember that being like that was really fun.
Was that kind of, well, you said that's like 10 or 15 albums in, but do you remember if it was that album or some other album where you kind of listen to your music and you're like, oh, like I'm actually figuring out how to do this well? Did you have a moment like that, or was it just all a blur of learning?
At that point, the only guiding principle I had was make it sound good.
Okay.
Like, make it sound good and spend lots of time making it sound good. And what that meant to me at that point was using lots of good equipment. So, like, everything that we did on that album, like, there was something special about it. Like, we would, like, restring our guitars every time we tracked a guitar. Like,
wow.
We would, like, use, like, really awesome amps. We would use really great outboard gear, like space echoes, and we would spend a lot of time getting drum sounds. We would spend a lot of time, like, miking the drum kit in different ways. We just spent a lot of different time, like, experimenting. And I was engineering that record, but I wasn't really leading that record. So Ben was really also, like, he was also kind of like guiding the whole thing, and he was kind of like determining like this is good and this is bad. But in general, it was just like I just wanted to sound unique and cool.
Yeah.
And when we got to mixing it at Smart Studios, like we paid a mixing engineer to be there for the whole thing, because we thought that we wanted someone to help us mix it because we were having a hard time mixing it at Big Gold.
Yeah.
But then I wound up mixing all of it except for like a track. Like I think that like the other guy like helped me like get started, but yeah, he was like there just to kind of like help me like figure out what equipment was what.
So that just goes to show you don't need anybody else, man. Just kick everybody else out of the room. You can do it all.
Oh, I think I would be so much better off though. I don't regret anything here, but yeah. I would have been so much better off if there were teachers in the Chicago music scene. Like, there's just not like, it's just like what, like you go to school for it, you can, and like you don't know what questions to ask,
right? So
by the time you get out, like 5 years later, you're just like, why didn't I ask more questions?
Right.
The other thing is like there's not like a good internship program. There's like a few studios that have good internships, or even like enough people who are like coming through the doors to make it worthwhile. There's just not a good education system in Chicago, so that's why like one of the things I do right now is I do a group for producers and engineers and songwriters where we meet monthly and we dissect Pro Tools sessions. Awesome. And we like talk about like the songwriting and the engineering and the producing and the plugins and everything that goes into it, because yeah, like I was taught how to drum edit. That was all I learned how to do. Like I had no idea, and there was no YouTube. There was no like looking it up online. It was just like I don't know, like SM57 on everything, like. And then like when I got more gear, like when I got to work on the Dr.Manhattan album, like it was just like I'm just gonna turn everything crazy, like
which is a perfect band to do it for because we were like, yes, do everything,
totally, yeah. So I would just be like, turn it up, like it's the lights are red, that's good, like. To the point where I don't know if you remember this, I started the speakers on fire at that studio.
I have a vague recollection of that happening, yeah.
I started the speakers on fire at Ivy Lab, like the second day of me ever working there. And those were hand given to the owner of the studio by Billy Corgan. Like they're like custom for him. And he comes in, he's just like, it's okay. And then the first time I worked at Chromatic, I blew one of those speakers out of the $15,000 speakers. I was just like, I don't know, like.
So you have a signature. You go the first time you go into a studio, you fuck it all up, and then you're like, I'm here. I have been here.
Yes, exactly.
Signed, Jon Alvin.
Yes, yeah. Fire.
So do you like when you were talking about there's not a good system for teaching production or recording in Chicago? Is I don't want to say is there like an ego, but is there kind of like an unspoken thing of with producers, like they don't want to give away all their secrets, or like they want people to learn the hard way, or like what is your experience?
Few people are like that. Yeah. Everyone will tell you what they do, but there have only been a couple times where I've asked people and they've been like, pfft. There was one time I heard a recording and I was like, I want to know how that guy did that, and I wrote him and I was like, how did you do that? And he was like, I'm not telling you. And I was like, I'll pay you. I'll pay you a consultant fee. Like, walk me through how you did that. And he was like, no, I'm not telling you. Wow. I was just like, all right, I'll find another way. Like, but yeah, like, I think mostly like people in Chicago and people in the group that I've been doing like are very open. They're very, very open. The only reason I would never give away a secret is because I just like I don't have the time or I'm too focused on the project that I'm working on.
Right.
Like. There's really no excuse. And I think that that's like kind of the way that things are going in recording now with Pensado's Place and Mix with the Masters and all these different YouTube channels that are just like open books for people to look at.
So now that YouTube is such a prevalent thing with people learning how to record, is there an advantage to still going to school for recording? I mean, I know like school in general is like, is it worth going to with all that's out there? But like, I guess specifically recording and production, like, is there a lot of value to going?
I never went to school for it other than for the first semester.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't say that I'm a big fan of it. If I were to like think about what I would do differently, knowing how my like late teens were, early college days were,
Yeah.
I would have gotten a degree in something else. And then since my parents paid for the first 2 years of college, I would have just like worked on recordings in my free time,
Right.
done my homework, and then like continue to grow my practice. But I would have gotten a degree in something else, and I wound up getting a degree in something else. So I don't think it's valuable to get a degree nowadays in engineering. I really don't, unless you're interested in the technical aspects of sound and physics, which can help. But
Recording gigs aren't based on like a resume or a degree.
not so much, no.
Yeah.
So somewhat of a resume, but not a degree really.
Right.
No.
So it's such a interesting thing to think about because you think about any other job, most other jobs, they want to know where you graduated from, what you got, what your grades were. School is the primary basis for getting into that field. But for recording, I mean, it's all about it's all about the quality of your work, or like, how long you've been doing it mostly.
Does your album sound good?
Yeah.
Or do albums that you make sound good? That's it.
Now that you've been recording how long now? Over 10 years?
Yeah, I like to say that I've been recording for over 10, anywhere between 10 to 15 years, because the first recording I did was in the year 2000.
Okay.
In my bedroom.
What, in 15 years experience, what do you think is the most important part of your job in an album? Is like, and I know each album can be different. Each band may want songwriting, or they may want you to mix more. Like your role may be different, but like, what do you think is the most important part of that process?
Planning.
Okay.
I think with our budgets in Chicago, like making sure that you're going to get a band like in and out the door with like knowing that you've done all of the planning. So like when you go into the studio, you don't screw around a bunch.
Right.
It's more focused, which is unfortunate because playing around in the studio is really fun.
Right.
So like when I go to a band or when a band comes to me, I say I can do one of three things. I can engineer your album, I can produce your album, I can do both. Engineering your album just means I'm recording and I'm not really having input about the arrangement or anything.
Right.
Producing is I give input about everything. Both is all of the above.
Yeah.
And usually people ask me to share my input, but there have been times where I've been asked to just engineer. So when I become an engineer and a producer, like my most important thing is usually to listen to the songs ahead of time, rehearse them differently, like how I see them sounding best.
Yeah.
Like doing demos, and then working with people over the phone or working with people through emails on various demos. So by the time that we actually get to recording it, we're on like the third or fourth draft of the song.
Yeah.
And that's the ideal.
Yeah, I remember when we started working with you on the self-titled album, you came to our practices, like you hung around a lot. You even just, I think maybe even the first few times you hung out, we didn't even play anything. I think you just wanted to like get the vibe of how we all acted, and you just wanted to see how we were as people. And for the second album, it was very different. I recorded drums in DeKalb. We went to Seattle and like chopped everything and mixed it all around there. And of the two experiences, like, and it's hard, but I was talking about this the other day on the last interview I did with Moose from the Brokedowns. I think I was talking to him about it. Like the first album, you have your whole life to write, so you can take as long as you want. You can
that's a thing.
redo, and then the second time there's other expectations. You either have a budget and you have to get in and out. And I mean, I'm not going to play favorites, but I mean, the first time recording, you're always going to hold special, and I loved that. I loved how you came in. We all hung out. You saw how we were as people first, then got a feel for the songs, then you knew what to do. You knew what your role was. It wasn't like, I'm going to figure this out as we're doing it. Like you had way of a head start when you started working.
Yeah. And I don't know like how that happened for me. Like I don't know how I learned that, but it was a bit of an intuitive thing. where it was like, I guess I figured out that there needed to be more planning rather than just be like, yo, band, show up, let's do this. Like, because I don't know, and I don't know how this happened, but like, I learned that it was important to be friends with the band and meet the band before like going into like a huge creative endeavor. I think it was just like a kind thing to do, like knowing that people are like spending a bunch of money, like it's like good manners.
Yeah. Well, and it made our experience, forever memorable. I mean, I can always think back on 1,000 different stories of us demoing the album and the hard drive took a shit, like just recording. I mean, had we not worked with you, we wouldn't have gone to Ivy Lab, we wouldn't have gone to Smart, and those are beautiful, awesome studios with great history. And so there's just so many things in there that like you got to experience with us as people, but also that was like at the beginning of our band. And because that album sounded so good, good things happened for us. So I think that's such a good point. Like planning is like, cause when you think of recording, you go, what's going to be important? You want good gear. You think of the actual recording experience, but I think anything done well is done because there's been planning ahead of time and you've sat together and you've figured out your plan of attack instead of just all throwing yourselves in the studio and seeing what happens, which can come from that too. But I think for at least for a band's first album, like the thing that they're going to put out into the world, I think it takes some sitting down and planning.
Yes, absolutely. For me, like I remember it just being like about that planning and about like the intuition about like when working on songs with you guys. Like I don't know why, but like there were songs that were better than others, and there were songs that like I wanted to do certain things with. And I just went off of my intuition about what to do. Yeah. And that was it. And I think like the more like I know for me, like as a producer, like the more I'm able to do that with people, it's usually like it usually winds up being a better project. Like the more that like that you plan and that you allow your intuition to work rather than or someone's intuition to work, like it works a lot better than like overthinking things and like comparing things a lot to other things or other albums and trying to like over structure things like there's that's the other side of the balance that can be bad.
So planning makes for a good experience. What in your history has made for bad recording experiences? Is it the people just being difficult or not having that planning or gear problems? I mean, what stands out as like things that are problematic for you in your experience?
The most difficult thing about recordings is when you care about the recording more than the people that you're recording. Oh, wow. So if I go into a project, like I'm going to care 100% about the project. Yeah. And I'm going to care 100% about the project, whether I'm getting paid, $100 for it or $5 million for it. Yeah. So if I'm working with someone and they aren't like as into it as me, like that sucks. That's a big no. Yeah. Another thing that sucks is when people are really sloppy and they don't do their work. Like, like depending on where you're at in your life, like people, like I'm at the point in my life where I want to make really good things. So if people don't do the work, if people don't do like the things that I say, like, okay, like next time we come to a rehearsal, like make sure you have all this stuff worked out. Yeah. And it sucks. Like, but you have to be in that flow and that structure of like rehearsing all the time, like once a week, twice a week. That's really important. It sucks when people don't know how to rehearse. It sucks when people are like a rehearsal is showing up, having a few beers, and then like finally getting into it, and then like maybe you'll get a couple songs done. Yeah. That's a mess. Like you want to be able to like have structured rehearsals, which are important. Another thing is like tardiness. I've worked with people and they've like there have been people who've been like 3 hours late, and it's just like like because like as you get older, it's like you have a family. It's like I want to like leave at the time we talked about. Yeah. I think like the biggest thing though for me right now is like having sessions that aren't creative or playful. Like the most important thing for me, like once you get into the studio and once you're working on things, like it has to be playful, it has to be creative.
Yeah.
It can't just be like there has to be a balance with that.
Yeah.
Like when, like every time I work on something for myself, like I'm always just playing and having fun. And that's when I feel like the best stuff happens. It's just when you're playing.
Right. Yeah, I think the overall theme or the underlying theme of this is balance, like you planning before so that there's a good product in the end, and also being serious about your craft, but breaking it up with some fun and being silly, because if you take it too seriously, you miss out on what the whole point of doing it is, and that comes in the form of us being at what was that studio called? The
Symbiotic?
No, the something with carpet. Gallery of Carpet?
Oh, Gallery of Carpet.
And I think that was Gallery of Carpet, where we're all just shirtless chugging water, and you yelled at us that you were Poseidon. And
I told that story once in a job interview because I thought that it was like, this was like the biggest. Who cares? Who cares? But I was interviewing for a position at an ad agency.
Mm-hmm.
And for like post sound mixer, and like I think the question, like one of the questions is like, in what ways have you been creative? And one of the people that had gotten me this interview was one of the interns on some of your stuff, or on some of the stuff that I did at Ivy Lab.
Okay.
And so they were like bringing up Ivy Lab, and they were like, yeah, like John's always been really creative when I've worked on sessions. And I was just like, let me tell you what I have done in recording sessions. And so I go like, one time the guy who was singing wasn't getting into enough, so I just started dumping water on him. And they were just like, okay, like me not realizing like this intern that I had, like she didn't have to tell them that she was dumping water on some, so. But oh my gosh, that was such a good time.
Well, that goes to show you. I mean, you hear stories of Brian Wilson setting fires in the studio. You're putting fires out. You're draining us with water to get the recording out of us that you need to.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's a that's a big part of what you want a producer. You want someone to know, like, you're not getting out of this what I know you can. Like, because some people, if you don't know them, you're going in. They don't know what you're capable of, so they're just going, all right, that sounds good. Like, you're hitting the notes, everything sounds like it's good. It's good enough.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's okay.
So, and they want to get through it because they got to mix all this shit and they have to meet a deadline. But that's just a perfect example of, you could have been like, no, good enough. We got it two times ago, so we're fine. But you screamed at us, and we're like, but never in a mean way. You were just like, you knew that was our energy. You knew exactly who you were dealing with. And if we were like a soft-spoken band who were playing folk songs and you came in screaming at us and pouring water on us, I mean, I don't know how it would have worked out. I think it would have made for a great album regardless, but you knew who you were dealing with, so you knew you could like push our buttons and get some good stuff out of us. So I think that's a big part of what a producer is someone that's not just going to say, yep, sounds good. Yep, sounds good. Yeah. Because either way, producer gets paid. So they can say, yep, sounds good. But that does feed, that does look back on you. Because I interviewed Casey Bates for this, and he said, like, when he heard your recordings of the Self-Titled, he's like, I have to get in touch with him. I have to tell him how good this album was. And that was something I didn't even know. I didn't know that you two had ever talked. Like, and he said just like a few emails or something back and forth. But he's like, I loved Big Chomper. So then I got a hold of the album, and then I got in touch with John and told him he's like, I had to at least tell him, like, this sounds awesome, like, great job. And had you been like, yeah, fine, whatever, like, yeah, then people wouldn't give a shit.
Right. Yeah, man. Oh, geez.
But I'm really glad when we put it on vinyl, we used your mixes and stuff, because I think it really brought it out on the vinyl. Like, it sounded really warm, and it, like, the remixes that Casey did were, they were great, but your recording, obviously it's going to mean more to us and more to me, that, because I know what those things sound like. I was there for it, but like, yeah, there's just more to it. It just feels a little more like home cooking or something.
That's what it was. It was like the difference between like Casey's and the other one was just, it was simple. Like I, like everything I recorded, like I put in the mix.
Yeah.
Like, and there was no like taking away.
Right.
Like Dr. Manhattan to me was like a maximalist, like loud ass, like just like blow the roof off the fucker, like just go crazy. And so I remember like when I got back the mixes that were different, like the drums had been replaced and then like they had like thinned out the guitar tracks, and I was just like, I guess that sounds better.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and that's and I remember when we'd been getting different remixes from people, like it's just so funny. Obviously, every producer's different. They all like different sounding things, but it's just crazy how different you can take one song, give it to 5 different people, and how differently it can sound, even though it's the same exact recording.
Absolutely.
It just goes to show like how important, like I said, how important your role is. Because I think sometimes people, especially when you're early in a band, you can't afford that. Sometimes you can't afford a producer. You need someone who's just going to record you just the songs you wrote, and that's that. And it's an important role. It's something that you could save the money on, but it's also something that you pay for it now, but it makes the recording better, and then leads to more, good things happening in your career because of it.
Well, like it's almost like a midwife. Like the role of a producer is like when you like the band isn't accustomed to the studio, and like the producer like helps negotiate like what that is going to be like for the band. Like how will that work? How is this going to actually happen when we get to the studio?
Yeah,
they're able to like really hopefully see to the end of it. They're able to see to the end of the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's really important is like the producer helps with that whole thing, and the band can worry about writing the songs and like tones and stuff like that. But the producer is going to help like really just like pick it up to the end. Because like a producer ideally or an engineer spends like every day in the studio.
Yeah.
Like I think that I probably spent like 200 days in a recording studio in the last year. Like so I know what it's like there.
Yeah.
Like I know how it will work.
Yeah.
If you're not spending all your time in there, like you're not going to get the most out of it.
So when it comes to, I don't know, this will be easy to answer, but when it comes to like, say you're in a band and you're about to go record, knowing what you know, what would be most important to you? A good studio or a studio that you are familiar with?
Good songs.
Yeah.
But a studio with good equipment, I'll take any day over a studio that I'm just so like comfortable with.
Okay.
I guess like looking at that a little more.
Yeah.
Like a studio definitely has to have a creative energy. It has to feel like it's a creative place. It has to feel like you're able to sit down. That was a lot of criticism I got about Chromatic, was that like it didn't feel like it felt too professional, and people felt like they were like it was like on the clock there or something. When like at the place I work now, it's like people are able to walk in, they're just like, I know I can make things here, because it doesn't feel like overly professional, but it feels like, oh, there's like a ton of synthesizers and there's a ton of guitars and there's a ton of amps, like all right there for me. And we don't have a lot of really like amazing gear. We have like a few simple preamps, good speakers, and like enough to make it work. But I don't know. So again, it's probably another balance where it's like the place has to be comfortable enough, and then the place also have to have like some decent gear.
Yeah.
I think like the thing that I've learned, because I've never really owned gear since I quit owning Big Gold Studios.
Mm-hmm.
I've like I have owned like a recording interface and a computer and like a couple microphones, like max.
Yeah.
I don't own like anything, and a lot of people own things. I own a guitar.
Yeah.
I have a guitar and a couple mics. Like that's it. And that's always like made me have to really like get the most out of whatever I'm working.
So we talked a lot about you recording us because that's my direct experience. Many good memories in recording an IV, mixing it smart. What since then have been some other projects you've worked on that have like that stick out, whether because they went on to get you more exposure, or like they did well, with sales, or is it just something that like no one even heard it, but to you it was like that was the best thing I've recorded?
Yeah. I'm gonna leave off a bunch here, but
sure, yeah.
One
I can start. One I've heard that sticks out to me is Bailiff, the Bailiff album.
Oh yeah,
is
totally.
Really, really good.
Totally good album. That was a long process of pre-production. There was like probably like 6 months of pre-production on that. Like we would do like a meeting every week for six months, and then we finally made it to the studio. We workshopped tons of songs. We worked from like 20 songs down to 10, and then for the second album, it was kind of similar. But that was awesome. Like I recently listened to that again because I was talking to those guys again. And yeah, like it sounds really good.
Yeah.
Another project that I really loved working on recently was a record for Dastardly. The reason I liked working on that was because that band was like very interested in not having it sound like anything normal, like taking instruments and making it sound different.
Yeah.
So we like our process was like they recorded everything and then like I reamped everything at the studio and like ran it all through boxes and effects units and compressors and all sorts of stuff. And like so every track on that album is just like heavily affected, and I love that stuff. I love like doing reverbs and delays and stuff. So the Dastardly record, The Hollow, was really good.
I'm gonna have Gabe on here in a few months, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Even though I've only met him once, but just from what I've heard musically, and also I think he's probably one of the funniest people I've ever read things on. He's hilarious.
Yeah, he's hilarious. he's really funny. Gabe and I work on music at least once a week.
Okay.
So
awesome.
we're working on projects. Other projects that have been really fun and really memorable. The Salvation Army is always a really great project for me to work on. I do an album with them almost every year, and that's like great because it's 8 people in the band. It's like about 8 people or something, and we're able to like again like have a proper recording experience. It's like we do pre-production, we do a day of demos or 2 days of demos. We listen to those demos. We do some more pre-production, and then we get to the studio and we do it all right. Like we do the drums, and then we like maybe some of it's a little live, but we just like spend a lot of time on it. And I get to hire Gabe for those too, and so Gabe gets to do all of the vocal work and everything. And
awesome.
It's just tons of fun. It's like another session where we get to come in with all these song structures, and then we get to play a lot with tones, and that is like that's great. Another one, I'm just going to name off a couple more. Like come to mind. This this singer from Chicago named Natalie Grace Alford. She's going to release her EP that we recorded a while ago. But I recorded an album with her, and she was amazing because her voice was just like, oh, like one take, two take, and she sounds like Whitney Houston. It was just like she just like burn it down. It was amazing. I'm sure I'm just leaving off so many things here.
Oh, that's fine.
But I also like my favorite experiences with recording also are just with myself when I get to record on things on my computer. I do a lot of that, and that's what like really feeds me in a way because so much of what I do it has to stay interesting and it has to keep me interested, and so I have to play and experiment a lot and get different sounds and go really far. Because if every project I do, or every time I work on things musically is just for someone else, it winds up like, I want to be like, no, like, let's do this in your music. Let's do this in music. And so it doesn't work in people's music because I like doing things that are like real crazy and don't make sense for like pop recordings at all.
Yeah.
And so I have to do that.
Well, I think that, like you said, that gives you a good, well-rounded experience because if you haven't done anything of your own, even passion projects that you're writing, at some point, you're going to embed yourself too much into their music, and then that could make things weird there. We're like, oh no, we don't want that idea. Like, you got to take time to enjoy music writing on your own so that you can come back and like help out on that too.
Sounds like you have a baby.
Yeah, here, let me go get her real quick. Maybe she'll sit patiently while we do this. I assume not.
Okay. There you go.
There you go. Let's see if I can turn it around. This is it's just John. You can say hey.
Hey,
Hey.
She's coming in. Hold on. Let me get her to turn around. Hey.
that's great.
She sees mom, so she's not paying attention.
Hi. Congratulations.
Hi there. Oh, will I be able to hear?
He says congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Nice to see you. How are you?
Nice to see you.
Hi,
Good.
Peanut.
Let me see if I can turn her around if she'll pay attention. Mom's here, so she's probably not going to behave.
I'll get out of the way.
That's okay.
Oh, I love her eyes.
Thank you. Loves her eyes.
Oh, thank you.
Uh-oh, I lost her.
Uh-oh.
Hold on. I got to do this for a minute. Hello?
Hi.
Hey.
Okay.
I don't know if it works. Oh, there we go.
Hi. Oh, yeah. Just saying congratulations. We're expecting a baby in March, and we're excited.
Oh, my goodness.
So, yeah.
Oh, congratulations. Boy or girl?
We don't know. We're not going to find out. Yeah. Yeah.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
Aw.
Yeah.
It's the best thing ever.
Yeah.
It's worth all
Looking real close.
Hey! Oh, she's adorable.
Thank you.
I just feel so great to see you and see, you have started a family, and it just warms my heart. So
nice to see you. I'll let you guys do your thing.
Nice seeing you, Jen.
Nice seeing you too. Congratulations again.
Oh, thanks. You too.
All right. So, I don't want to say like missed opportunities, but anything that's come your way that you passed on that you wish you would have done, or has that not really happened?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I haven't been in a situation where I've had to pass on things. I think there's like been a couple of times where there's been like sessions that people have contacted me about like a few hours before, and it's just been like,
oh yeah,
I can't do that. But nothing like big picture. Like, no, not really.
Okay.
I feel like I've been able to make everything work. Really, like I've been able to budget my time well and have everything work. And
you said before you got a degree that wasn't in producing. What was that in?
I have a degree in painting and printmaking, and I also like more than 50% of that degree was also based on writing a thesis on Jungian psychology. Okay. And so I wrote a lot on psychology in college. And up until recently, I was actually going to go back to graduate school and get a degree in art therapy. Oh. But school costs $100,000.
So there you have it.
Yeah, so I'm not going to do that.
So what music have you been I know musically, like you've talked a little bit about what you like to listen to in your free time, but like, what are you listening to lately that, like, albums from this year or just things that you've been drawn to, whether it's production or, just solid songwriting? What's been getting you going?
Absolutely. Really simply, I like things that push the boundaries, that sound amazing, and like amazing by everyone's standards, meaning like radio standards. And I also like a lot of dance music. So boundary pushing stuff is like more like noise stuff, or like One O Tricks Point Never, which is like very like just insane. I love that. I love the fact that it's like almost like a collage of stuff. I like an example, not the best example, but I like the way that like the Adele album sounds. I don't love the album, but I think that that's a really great sounding album. It's a big sounding album. It's well arranged.
Yeah.
So I'm a really big fan of that. And then like I'm just like, I really like dance music. So like I listen to a lot of dance music, thing that has like 4 on the floor, like a beat that is constant and pulsing. I spend most of my time listening to, in the last year, like my Spotify was like Harold Budd, which is ambient piano music, Enya, which is new age Irish folk.
Enya's just Enya.
Enya. I listen to a lot of Bach and Philip Glass, and then I don't know. Then like whatever's on the radio, I'll listen to make sure that I'm like not out of touch with that or something.
Yeah. I keep getting drawn back to, for album of this year that really knocked me on my ass, and one that is probably going to make its way into my top 10 albums, is the new Kendrick Lamar. Like,
okay, yeah, I listened to a ton of that album. That is absolutely.
I feel like that's going to be like, there's a few moments in my life. The first time I heard No Effects, I was like, "What is this?" The first time I think being with you and you showing me Bjork, like I'd heard a Bjork song, but then I was like, you were like, "No, you need to like sit down and listen to Bjork," and that was like another "what is this" moment. And then
it's like such a painful album because a lot of it I can like relate to on a human level, but a lot of it I can't relate to on just a race level.
Right.
And it really like it's just loud and clear in that way. But like on a music level and like a lyrical level, it's just like, wow, like thank you, like that is amazing. And that's the power of word, and that's the power of music. So yeah, it's that album shook me like many times.
Is an album like that, or other ones that you enjoy, is that something that reminds you of why you do what you do, like what your role is in that? Or
well, that's for sure. Yeah, actually like recently for me, like what's been doing that is I've been re-listening through albums that I got into, like we were talking about in the beginning. Like I started re-listening to a lot of the Bjork and Aphex Twin albums and Radiohead albums and stuff like that, and those were really great reminders for me just in the last couple months. Like, this is why I do this. Like, this is what it can be. This is what music can be, rather than like if I have a project that's just like boring or something. Like it reminds me of like what the possibilities are when we use sound and when we use music to create art. So yeah, like Kendrick, like yeah, of course, like Kendrick Lamar, that's like a masterpiece album. And I think that more and more as I work with people, like I understand, like I learn. There's like when you work with people, there's like what they can do and like what you can help them to get to for a recording, and then if they stick with you for a while, like you can bring them really far. But like for the most part, like if I have a masterpiece in mind, I can't do all of that work in my in with what I do. So I have to like gauge when I work on an album, like how far can I bring them? Like, does it just mean making some of the lyrics better, making the arrangements better, or does it mean like we're gonna throw everything out and we're gonna like really go to work? And there have been times where I've said like we're throwing everything out and we're gonna go to work, and then the band breaks up because I dropped too much of a bomb on them. It's just like, look, if we're gonna do this, if we want to be good, like we got to do all this work, and then it'll be like, well, that person doesn't care enough about this band, like it's so that happens. But yeah, like the fact that great albums are being made and like listening to great albums like are absolutely a source of inspiration. Absolutely. I think like for a long time when I was beginning recording, just getting the drums, bass, guitar, and vocals down was important to me. Now when I work on albums, it's like I want all of that plus all of the percussion plus all of the synthesizers plus everything. Like take it back, different mixes of those things, different samples for everything, different sounds, cutting things up, taking things out, putting things back in. Like my process is I'm able to go through a lot more on the engineering and producing end than just worrying about like, oh shit, like how do I even get these few things down? So when I work on things now, like something like To Pimp a Butterfly, it's like some of those songs are really simple. But like I don't know, like okay, so what I think about like when I think of To Pimp a Butterfly is I think of like how much play happened with that album. Like there's so many songs on that album where it's just like the beat is so simple, but it's so poignant and it's so amazing. And there have been times where I've worked on stuff in the studio and it's been like, you know, like we work for like days on a beat or something, it doesn't work out. Like that doesn't feel right to me. Like what feels right to me is just like getting the beat in a few hours and knowing that that's working and then moving on. And I feel like that only happens if you're able to be playful rather than like, you know, so I hope what I'm saying is making sense.
I think it's hard, especially I feel like especially in the beginning of a band. Something I was talking to Moose about the other day was naming a band. That's such a big deal to you when you start a band because it's like, this is the name of the band. But then once you're a band, you're like, oh, it doesn't even matter. Like, this is just a thing to call us instead of just naming off all of our names in this band. Like, it ends up not being that important. So something as precious as you can be in the studio and you can focus on this one beat and then you become like obsessed with it. And you're like, it ends up hindering the whole process because you spend 2 days on this thing and you don't have enough money or time to like keep working on that thing. What seemingly is more important is just get something down, build off of that, and then like either revisit it or, you know, let it kind of grow while you're doing other things in the process. Like you said, you have to be loose, you have to be playful. You can't like become so precious about certain things in that world.
And I think early on in my career, I was overly precious about things. Not always, but like now I'm able to like, since I have more of like a big picture of the craft, I'm able to be like, yeah, like taking out that part of the song, no problem. Like, oh, like we're going to totally redo just the kick drum. Like, fine. Like I can do that. I'm not as worried anymore about keeping it all together. Like I can let it just like go in any direction. Great.
Well, like you said, I mean, I think when anyone starts doing anything, they are precious about that. When you started learning recording, you're like the snare drum and on Clarity, that snare drum sounds. And then you probably on your first recordings like obsessed over getting a snare to sound good. And then you learn eventually like, yeah, I want the snare to sound good, but this whole thing has to sound good too. I can't just obsess over the sound of that snare drum. But on that note, we did become very focused on the snare drum sound for our album, and it paid off because when I listened to it, I'm like, I love that Black Beauty. Like, that snare drum is a killer, and I always remember the name of it because of you were like, that's the snare drum we're using. Like, this is what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Do you think it's a prerequisite for a producer to be a gearhead? Like, you got to know that stuff to know how good your recordings can be. You got to know good snare drums. You got to know good guitars and amps. Like,
yes, it is.
Yeah,
it really is. I mean, it not necessarily, but like it adds a lot.
Yeah,
it adds a lot. Like, I used to be like, I don't know why we need so many plugins and why we need different things. And like, the more that I work with plugins, it's like yeah, like I have 6 different delays and they all do something different.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I know like why I go to each one. I know why I go to different reverbs. I know why I go to different compressors. Like, yeah, if you know more about all of the tools, it helps a lot.
So for someone who's listening to this, who's like, I'm kind of interested in getting a recording, like what, but I don't know where to start. Like, do I go to Full Sail? Do I listen to albums? Like what? And this is a very broad question. Everyone will answer differently. Where do you think the right way, what's the right foot to get on? Is it getting into gear? Is it just going into a studio and spending time?
It's having experiences.
Yeah.
Having experiences, trying to record people, even if you don't get paid. Just having the experiences, making a lot of mistakes, and doing that all like while you're working with people.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the most important. And then yeah, like while you're doing that, like just like looking up videos on YouTube and trying to learn from people. That's it. Like you have like, we now have that system. Like you can learn online, you can have the experiences.
Yeah.
And then if you have like one person that you can talk to about that who's really good, like that's the thing. It's like, that's like an old like Buddhist thing, is like you have the Dharma, the Buddha, and the Sangha.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way it's like you have the teachings, you have the person, and then the Sangha would be like the community of things.
Yeah.
So maybe like the community is like the online community now, or the community, you know, that you meet with, or the group that you're working with, or whatever. But those things are important to grow.
So if people are in the Chicago area and they want to come to one of these classes you're talking about, what's some info on that? How do they get involved with that?
You can look up on my website my contact information, and I'll just add people to the email chain. But there's like 40 or 50 people on the email chain, and then everywhere between like 10 to 20 people show up each time.
Okay. And your website is it jonalvin.com or Jonathan Alvin?
It's jonathanalvin.com.
Okay.
Yeah. www.jonathanalvin.com.
Okay, cool. I mean, there's bound to be at some point someone who hears this and is like, oh man, you know, I like his style. I want to get, or just like you said, like a community is a big part of becoming a good engineer, good producer.
It's not even about me in a lot of ways. Like I just structure the thing, and then like there's people who are there who are just like badass engineers and like that I look up to a lot. Mm-hmm. That are like that, like I love it when they answer questions because I learn so much.
Yeah.
So yep.
Well, good. What's a good little, because now we've kind of buttoned this up nicely. We started at our experiences, ended up on like where to go for producers and engineers who are interested. What's a good story what's a story you hold on to from recording that like you'll always look back on fondly, whether with us or like just an experience you had that like reminds you why you do what you do?
Well, I think we covered the ones with a couple with you guys.
Yeah.
I think one of the best experiences ever of being in a recording studio, I was recording a Mutts album. So it's Mike Maimone, Bob Buckstaff, and Chris Faller.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris is on drums, Bob's on bass, and Mike's on this like old piano that like you have to like hit to make a sound. It's like it's so old, and he's also like tuning it because like it's going out of tune.
Oh wow!
So like it's insane. And Mike and they're playing live, and we're recording it to this 8-track tape machine that was used on Beach Boys, the Beach Boys, Beach Boys recordings. But like one of the channels is down, so it's only a 7-track. But then like also one of those cuts out every once in a while. So it's like kick, snare, overhead, like bass, piano, room.
Yeah.
And they're playing all these songs, and Mike Maimone is just like yelling into the room. So like it's just this like huge room, and he's just like you can just hear it all in the recording. And so when we're listening back to this one song, it's about like essentially about like the bad parts of capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
He comes in, and we're listening back, and he just starts crying, and he's just like, like capitalism sucks, like this is what it's done to my family, these are the things that it sucks, and he's just crying about this, and it's just like that's amazing. Like he was able to like open up in all of these different ways on this recording, and like then also just like share vulnerably about like what that was. And then we like released that, and it was just like it's just an amazing experience. It was so cathartic and like just sad, and like it was just a great way to express all that anger and sadness and pain of what it's like to be a human living in capitalism.
Well, good shit. I don't even know what else I could ask you. I feel like it kind of touched on everything. Is there
I feel good.
Are there future projects you kind of know about already that you're working on that you can talk about, or just things that you're just like, oh no, I'm just excited about?
Yeah. There's a couple I can't talk about, but there's many that I can. The working with Gabe is really good.
Mm-hmm.
We're working on songs with him. The stuff that I'm doing myself, I'm really excited about. I'm doing a project with the singer from Carbon Tigers.
Okay.
He's in a new project, and I'm recording that project that's coming up really soon. It's exciting. I'm doing another Salvation Army record, which I'm really excited about. That's going to start up pretty soon too. I wish I could talk about a couple of these, but I can't.
It's all right.
They're really great, exciting. I think that's it.
One of my favorite parts when I do listen to self-titled every now and then is on, I think it's Minds Like Ours at the end, or no, is it Minds Like Ours? At the end,
would have been easy.
No, at the end of one of the songs, you go, or I don't shit. Now I'm the band member who doesn't know his own songs. It's at the end of a song, and you hear you go da 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 da, like you do the drum roll, but you say it out loud. It's like Dirty Scandalous Dirty or something, but we kept it in there because it was like you in the room just like shouting things, and we're like, yeah, you got to keep that in. Like that's perfect.
Hell yeah. I got to listen to that album again. I know I'm going to have a good experience when I listen to it because I've listened to it recently, and it's good. It's a good experience.
When I listen to it, I've always kind of focused on Baton Rouge for some reason, but I always like even more so. I'm like, what a good job you did with that song, because it is like. It's a song that doesn't have to go on that album, but it does still somehow fit, even though it's a kind of left field song.
Mm-hmm.
But like what was that? Was that an accordion, or what the instrument that you had to pump?
It's a harmonium.
Harmonium. Like getting to be in Ivy Lab and like mess around with these toys, things like that, and just like all the instruments at our disposal is just like. It all came out in that album. Like you hear so many things going on, and it's like that's what that's like. That's what makes recording in a studio like that worth it. There's like, look at all this stuff. Now go play with it.
When Andrew was playing that huge organ, yeah, that was great. Great.
Well, I hope somebody who listens to this hears us talk about this. Here's the songs that I drop that you've worked on. And because of it, at some point, ends up getting in touch with you and working with you, because I think
great.
You bring a lot to the table for a band. You're not just someone, like we said, you're not just someone who you send songs to and then you chop it up and it's done. Like, you become passionate for that project and you become invested. Like, when you were talking about recording, you said we have to get this. You didn't say you guys. Like, you are a part of it. You're part of that band for that process. And I think you are good, especially for us. You are our first big album experience. I think you're a good, any album, but especially a good first album experience producer. So I hope other bands who aren't familiar with you or other artists who hear this get in touch with you, because
thank you.
That's what I would want. Too. I would ideally want you to be doing the next Adele record.
Oh, damn.
In a month or so, because I know she's a fan.
Yeah, in a month.
Yeah, give herself some time.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, thanks. Thanks for all those kind words. It's really great meeting your child and seeing you, and I hope that you have a really good night.
Thank you, and you too. Yeah, it's New Year's, man. Have a good holiday. You're having people over, so have a good fun little New Year's Eve. Thanks for the hour and change. Thanks for waiting while I had to go change her.
Not a problem at all.
Good catching up with you, buddy. You're one of the good ones. You're one of the ones who has a little special place in my heart.
Yeah, you too. All right,
buddy. Have a good holiday.
All right, you too.